Hello, and welcome to the Phoenix Burning Podcast. There is a phase of the Phoenix cycle where it burns and returns to ash, a phase we often overlook in favor of the more inspirational Phoenix Rising. However, sometimes we need to burn away the old before we're ready for the new. I am Veronika Archer, an intuitive guide and transformation coach, and in this podcast, I share my audio diary chronicling my burning phase. These recordings are completely raw and unfiltered, often recorded while I walk around outside in nature, and I release them to you in their unedited state in the hopes that you may find comfort, hope, and maybe some inspiration as you go through your burning.
Hello, lovely, and thank you for joining me on my restoration journey. Today is the day that I'm recording this. It is January 5th, 2023. I've recorded several sessions in a row as I get caught up on where I am in my journey and why it is that I'm recording this for you. So today, in this recording, my intention is to share with you just that, exactly what it is that I'm doing, why it is that I'm sharing it, and what I hope you'll get out of it. I have decided to dedicate 6 months, beginning in January and going through June, to my restoration, to restoring myself. Or it may not even be so much a restoration as it is a state of being. A state of being. We are conditioned as a culture, as a society, as a world, as a global community, to be quote unquote productive, to always be doing, especially in the US where I am. I know in some countries there may be a more relaxed approach, or there may be more acceptance of vacations. Certainly here in the US, there is this pressure to always do, to always work. And I'm finding that that's true also in the healing space. So I have found myself to be in a place of pretty significant collapse. I'll use the word collapse. My body is unwell, and my emotions are, I'm experiencing a lot of grief and pain and guilt. And my life force, I will use that term, my life force is low and depleted. And as a healer, as a coach, I'm someone who advocates for a lot of these tools that we see in the healing community, things you can do to shift your energy. You are the creator of your experience, which I 100% agree with and teach and implement myself the tools around that, being a creator or a co-creator of your own experience. And what I've discovered in this particular phase that I'm in right now is that all of those tools are not resonating with me. And that's really shocking to me. And what I'm finding is that I'm feeling a call or a pull for deep, committed restoration, rest, and a true focusing on myself. So while on the one hand, I do implement the things I teach. So I have a pretty robust and regular meditation practice. I practice presence all the time, every day. And I also have dedicated meditation practice for at least an hour. I usually meditate for an hour every morning. And I also journal. And I have gratitude practice and intention practice. If you're somebody who's done any of my programs, any of the tools that you've learned, I implement on a regular basis. So my self-care practices are quite high, not just in terms of meditation, but I spend a lot of time outside. I spend time with friends. I do not have a very haggard or stressful life. I allow myself to rest and all those things. Nevertheless, if you listen to another episode, I did share about how I have really not put myself first in other areas, including my physical health. And on a more of a meta level, energetic level, what I've observed about myself, not just recently, but for quite some time, is that I have allowed my energy to be siphoned. I've allowed there to be energy drains, energy leaks. So what I mean by that is allowing people. So of course I was married to a narcissist, right? Narcissists really take and drain and take away from you. And my physical health is in the same way. I'm noticing that the problems I'm experiencing are a result of things that are in my body that are draining my energy. Financially, I've not been as careful or disciplined or tight with my finances, and I've allowed money to leak places. So when you have energy leaks, even if you have a robust self-care practice, you also need to really pay attention to those leaks and fill them. Stop the leaks so you're not just pouring in. And I believe, or I suspect, that this collapse that I'm in right now is a result of not being diligent about, or maybe not even being aware of the amount of energy leaks that I have in my life. So when we have experiences in our life, you'll start noticing that there are patterns, and those patterns repeat in other areas of your life. And even as you start healing and shifting and transforming, you'll notice those patterns showing up in other ways and deeper ways. So the energy leak thing is something I became aware of many years ago as I was learning about narcissistic trauma and everything I'd experienced and the choices I'd made to end up there. And but nevertheless, as you deepen into your healing, you're going to just get into deeper and deeper layers. And also we come to ends of cycles. So something I'm feeling very strongly right now is that I'm really coming to an end of this cycle of healing and of understanding and of shifting. It's been a 7-year cycle, which is also interesting because cycles seem to happen in 7. And I feel the beginning of something new coming. It may not be for a year or 2 years. It's not something that's going to happen right away. But I'm preparing. I'm on a kind of spiritual level. I can see that my soul is preparing for something else. So what I'm observing is that potentially, I don't know if this is universal, as you end a cycle and are preparing for your next cycle, there's a big shedding, releasing that's happening. And actually, perhaps more than the energy leaks, that is what I'm really noticing and feeling and observing. It's this massive releasing of old habits, old pains, old patterns, and all of those things showing up in my body, in my money, in all kinds of ways. And I've been thinking a lot about the Phoenix cycle because the Phoenix is used so often as a symbol of hope and inspiration, especially for people who've gone through trauma or difficult experiences. And there's the whole, rising from the ashes and the power in your pain, right? Which is all beautiful and true and valid. However, the part of the cycle that's not really talked about is when the Phoenix is at the end of its particular stage, it then, at the end of its life, that particular life, it burns. And in old mythology, it actually says that the phoenix knows when it's at the end, and it'll bring different incense and aromatic herbs into its nest and light them on fire in a ritual, and then it burns and turns to ash. And that burning and turning to ash is an important part of the process before you can then be reborn into that next phase, the next phoenix that comes out of that ash. So that's where I feel that I am right now. I'm in a space of burning and returning to ash. And there's a deep need to be, to simply be, rather than try to transform, try to shift, try to move out of my pain. All the doing that we're taught to do in general, and even in the healing world, none of that feels right for me right now. It feels jarring. Sometimes it makes me angry. So I decided to record this podcast because I decided that this phase that I'm going through is very difficult. Not only is it difficult, but the things that I feel that I need are different than the things I've experienced in other stages of healing. And I thought two things. That one, it might be helpful for others to hear this experience in the event that they may be going through something similar. So you can hear a different approach for when you're in this space. And then also, to be perfectly honest, I'm also using this as a form of accountability. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, is exactly what it is that I plan to do during this space of being and restoration. And I'm going to check in each week and let you know how things are going. So I think I may have mentioned in another episode that this recording is completely raw and authentic. Most of these recordings I'm doing while I walk around outside here in the complex where I live in Southern California. So you will probably hear birds. I live adjacent to a freeway, so you will probably hear freeway noises. And I'm just talking. I'm just sharing whatever is happening for me right now. So the number one thing that I am committed to in this process is to be. And I'm somebody who practices presence already. I typically am already a very present, grounded, embodied person. And it's interesting that despite that, I'm being called to be on an even deeper and even slower level. And I have to keep reminding myself. It's surprisingly difficult. So in honor of that, these recordings are just going to be me. There's no script. There's nothing that I'm trying to, there's no goal. I'm just sharing with you where I'm at right now and what's happening. Okay. So I'm committed to being and restoring for the next 6 months. This next part I'm going to share is a little paradoxical to that. So I'm going to see what it sounds like when I say it out loud. Maybe I'll change my mind. Speaking out loud, by the way, can be very profound. There's so much power in the spoken word. So I encourage you to do something like this for yourself, to speak out loud. Whether it's inside your house. I have an app that I use that I love for recording messages. And I frequently record messages for my friends, for my clients. Sometimes I just speak out loud to myself. So if you're somebody who's following my journey, I invite you to do the same and start a little voice memo journal. It's different from writing. You're welcome to write as well. I write also, I journal also. But there's something about speaking out loud, which for me is deeply healing, and also really can spur my intuition. So the part that I wanted to speak out loud today, it is so gorgeous. I'm a little distracted because I'm walking around outside. And we just had a huge rain, which is unusual, and the sun is coming through. And we have these huge storm clouds, really interesting shapes. And the birds are just loving this weather, and there's a lot of bird activity, and the air is really clear after the rain, and the sun is shining through, but you have these big storm clouds at the same time. It's just really gorgeous. Okay, so 6 months of being. So here's the part that's a little contradictory. I've also discovered that for me personally, I require a certain amount of structure. Now, I think we all, as humans, require structure. Very briefly, I'll share my thoughts on polarity, which I'm not really going to talk about here. In my other, I will address that more in the other segments of this podcast, so you can check out discussions there with Sacred Sandy. We talk about feminine energy and polarity. But there's basically, well, there's different kinds of energies, right? But there's two kinds of energies, which are the yin and yang. Some people talk about feminine and masculine. I'm not going to refer to it that way because my viewpoints are different from many of the common polarity teachings today, so I don't want to get mixed up. I don't want there to be any confusion. But basically, there's flow, there's creativity. I always think of just water flowing, and also all the different ways that water can be, right? Water can just disperse on the ground and disappear. It can be a raging river that cuts canyons. It can be a tranquil lake, right? All these different things. So that's the yin, or the feminine energy. And then there's structure, and there's purpose, there's productivity, especially the structure part of that. And when the structure and the flow combine, that's when you get creation. That's the beautiful combination of masculine and feminine. I've always been in my masculine energy more. Structure, discipline, things like that are things that I'm comfortable with. And I'm feeling a pull to be more, even more in my flow, even though the past 2 years I've been in my flow a lot. So that's what I'm sharing with you here in these recordings. And at the same time, I'm recognizing the need for structure. So that, because for me, if I'm too much in flow, I'm like that water that just dissipates. Like you're trying to get a drink of water, and you scoop it up with your hands, and it just goes through your hands and disappears into the ground, and you can never get a full amount. That's how I feel when I don't have structure. My energy becomes very diffused and very low. My energy is already low. So I want to attempt to create a structure that supports restoration, right? And as I say that, I just got this huge smile on my face, because that's, of course, some people listening may say, well, yes, that is the beautiful combination of the masculine and feminine energies, right? So my feminine. Okay, I said I wasn't going to talk about feminine and masculine, but I guess I am. So what happens when you speak out loud? You don't know what's going to come up. My feminine is what needs to be supported, because I've been in my masculine for so long, and not only have I been in my masculine for so long, my feminine has been blatantly disregarded. I wanted to say abused, but I don't know if that's quite the right word. From a very young age, I was told to not do creative feminine things because my sister was better at it. So I was always, told to not do things. Then, of course, there's the age-old, don't be sensitive, don't be emotional, don't be intuitive, don't listen, So there's a kind of a bigger picture conditioning around the feminine. But in my birth family, I was really groomed by my mother to step into masculine energy. And then in my marriage for 16 years, and then continuing for the past 7 years, My kid's dad, my ex, very disrespectful to me in general, but to, I'm speaking on a bigger level here, to feminine energy. Anything I did that was loving or nurturing, and let me tell you, I am not like a motherly person. I'm not somebody who dotes on my children or dotes on anybody for that matter. I'm not a homemaker. I've always been this sort of independent, big picture thinker, pursuing my career, right, the masculine things. Despite me not being super overtly feminine or overtly mothering, anything I did that was showing love to my children, that was soft, that was feminine, my ex would put down. You're being too soft. You're being too, don't cook for the kids. They need to learn how to cook for themselves, right? Okay, but I enjoy making meals and food for my family, right? So my feminine, and there's other examples, but I sort of don't want to dive into I don't want to go into the story of the negative story. My point was simply that my feminine has been beaten down my entire lifetime. And I'm just now, at the age of 48, really stepping into and allowing that feminine energy to be valued, to be seen, to come out. And what she needs, the feminine inside of myself, is to be held by structure. That's what I keep hearing as I'm going through this restoration process, is I need to be held. And what I mean by that is not literally physically, though that would be nice too, but it's that feeling, right? When you're someplace safe and you can relax, when you're provided for, when you don't have to worry about anything, where your meals are coming from or where your shelter's coming from. You don't have to worry about safety, right? It's like the feeling of a little kid with healthy parents, right? Your needs are taken care of. I'm not at all saying that that's what men should provide women. This is why I didn't want to talk about masculine and feminine energy. So I'm talking more on a bigger picture level, that the feminine energy within me is wanting to come forward, and also she is so beaten down. In order to come forward, she needs to be held, she needs structure. So, I was not expecting to talk about this for so long. Here's the part that I wanted to share with you today. What the heck is this 6-month journey about? So when I first decided to do this, it was my intention to take a 6-month sabbatical. So I'm in this unexpected situation where 2 of my children are currently living full-time with their father, and I don't have very much involvement with them. I shared the story of one of them. I don't think I've shared the other story yet, and perhaps I will at some point in time. I basically lost those 2 children over the span of 3 months. Unexpectedly lost, I mean emotionally. They're alive. And then my other son is away at college right now. So I find myself suddenly, without that requirement of daily responsibility. Of course, I'm wanting to be involved with my children, right? But it was suddenly this moment of not having that day-to-day requirement. And my work, as you know, I do online, and I can do anywhere in the world. And so it seemed like an opportunity where I could actually take a true sabbatical of, so my intention was to go someplace where I could be held. So what does that mean for me? So for me, it meant, so many things are jumping into my head. It's hard to share them all. So the things that were important to me is, 1, being someplace in nature, close to nature, surrounded by nature, which I am here in Southern California. But nevertheless, I love nature and I find it very restorative. A space that's beautiful, on the inside as well, whatever place I'm living in, that feels, that feeling like when you go. I love going to Airbnbs where the person's really taken a lot of care, and it just feels so beautiful and just beautiful. Someplace where I need to eat. I'm on a restrictive diet right now because of my health, and I'm finding it very difficult to cook and clean and do all the things that are required for that. And so, a place where healthy meals would be easy. And then I also wanted to downsize. So my intention originally was to move out of the place I'm living in now, put everything in storage, and just live very simply. So it had the added benefit of reduced expenses. So that's what I was intending. And so something that if you're following along and feeling like you also want to do the 6 months of restoration, there are a couple things that I want to invite you to do. So one is you can make a list similar to what I just did about what does restoration mean to you? What do you need to feel held, to feel like you can heal, like you can rest, emotionally, spiritually rest? My guess is that your first thought would be, I can't just take. Good for you, Veronika, that you suddenly find yourself in this position with minimal responsibilities. But I'm not in that space. I have so many responsibilities. And I can tell you that this arrival at this level of rest that I'm moving into now came over the course of about, I would say, 10 years when I was in corporate America still. And I didn't realize that's what I was moving towards, but looking back now, I can see that. I started releasing myself of responsibility a little bit at a time, taking a job that was no longer in management, then moving from that job into a place where I was working from home, then moving into a contract position and starting my own business. Slowly, piece by piece, I slowed my life down. So perhaps you're not able to, at this moment, go into a deep level of releasing of responsibility. However, I would invite you and encourage you to just look at where can you do less, because I know that you can. And I know that because not only have I gone through that process, I also have supported clients through that as well. It's probably one of the number one things I hear from people. I have so much to do, so much responsibility. I can't do less. I can't. People are relying on me. So just consider what you might be able to do. The other thing is I had expected taking some kind of a sabbatical to be very expensive. And I started researching different options. And let me tell you, I was pretty surprised at the number of ways there are to visit places and travel very inexpensively. In fact, for less money than what I'm currently required to have for my living expenses here in Southern California. Now, granted, I live in a pretty expensive area, a pretty expensive place. I live in an inexpensive area for Southern California, but Southern California is pretty expensive. So if you, like me, feel that taking a sabbatical or even just going for a weekend retreat or a 1 week or 1 month retreat is cost prohibitive, allow yourself to get creative and see what you can find. Because like I said, I found things that were very affordable. Now, the things I found that were affordable required time, right? So it required the ability to maybe volunteer or to live in that space or things like that, right? So that everything's a trade-off. Okay. So that's what I had originally intended to do, and I thought it would be really fun to chronicle my sabbatical. Since making that decision, things have changed a little bit. I'm going back to court. My ex is taking me back to court, which is providing me the opportunity to ask for more time with my kids and therapy and things like that. I don't know how all that's going to shake out. However, I'm wanting to stay where I am while I'm dealing with court and all those kinds of things. So I've decided that since I had already gotten really excited about this idea of a sabbatical, that I was simply going to do 6 months of restoration, and I'm going to do it wherever I am because that's what I need right now. And I made that commitment to myself. In another episode, I talk about making commitments to yourself and the universe asking you to take action and to prove that you are actually committed to the things you're committed to. So that's what I feel like is happening here. I made a commitment to myself, and then pretty quickly things changed, and I realized I may not be able to do it in the way that I had wanted or planned or envisioned. So the question is, are you committed to restoration? Are you committed to putting yourself first and taking care of your needs through the next 6 months? And so the answer that came back was yes, I am committed. So how can I do it here? So I'm actually pretty excited to share this with you because I think sharing how I can develop a sense of restoration and healing in my daily life may actually help you more because or be more supportive to those of you listening, because many people are not able to just go away and go on a sabbatical, right? So here's where my sessions with you are a form of accountability, because I'm going to share what it is that I need for restoration. So I've already shared some of that, right? I really want to simplify my life to where I have very little to do outside of the bare necessities. Now, I have simplified my life in a lot of ways already. There's 2 areas that cause me a lot of stress. I'm not a homemaker. My house is always messy and it's always dirty. And it stresses me out. Like, some people I think are messy or dirty and they're okay with it. I like being in a clean, beautiful, well-organized environment. And so I can pay to have my house cleaned more regularly. That feels stressful to me because that means I need to budget that into my budget. So one of my goals is to actually simplify. That's one of my biggest goals. Simplify, reduce my expenses, clean up my financial health as well as my physical health. Those are my 2 priorities for this sabbatical, for these 6 months. So everything that I do, I have to ask myself, is this contributing to my physical health? Is this contributing to my financial health? Or am I allowing myself to be distracted by things? I had an opportunity to join a coaching program, and I was sitting there debating it. And I was like, what are you doing? A 6-month coaching program. Is that restorative? Is that in your financial best interest? No, it would have been a fun distraction because I love doing that stuff. In the last episode, I said that I'd be curious to see what kinds of things come up from the universe to see if I'm really committed. So I guess that was another one. So funny, right? Okay, so my physical health and my financial health. So for me, that means my home causes me stress. And also my children all just left and left their things pretty much exactly the way they are. So I also have this bizarre feeling of like I'm living in this house with like the ghost of my children because all of their things are still there as though they're going to walk in the door tomorrow. So I want to simplify, and I'm going to do that in one of 2 ways. I'm either going to move and just completely downsize, which is what I was going to do had I gone away. So find an Airbnb locally, which isn't great financially, but anyways, I'm still exploring my options there. My intention is to have a decision by the end of this month, by the end of January, as to what that's going to look like. Depending on how things pan out with my children, I may stay in my home, in which case I have a friend who's an organizer, and she's going to come and help me completely declutter, organize, beautify my home. So, and now that I say that out loud, that sounds really, really good. So I may do option B. Food is another area that causes me a lot of stress. I need to be eating more healthy than I am. And I really struggle. I like cooking. I know how to eat healthy. That's not a problem. I really struggle with just all the effort around it because of how poor my health is right now. So shopping, then cooking, and then cleaning is too much. So I ordered a meal service, which is more expensive. Not for all my meals, but about half to 2/3 of my meals. And I'm doing that again for the month of January. I may do it longer, depending on how everything pans out. So I should say again, when I was looking at sabbaticals, I was looking at ashrams. And for me, ashrams felt so nourishing, and I was so excited about that possibility. So what I liked about the ashram was a simple place to live. The meals are cooked for you, provided for you, and you're in a community of people who are also, on a spiritual path. There's daily meditations and yogas and dharmas and teachings and all those kinds of things. So it felt very structured, a structure that I didn't have to create myself, a structure that was there that I could step into. So now that I'm more than likely not going to do that, I'm looking for ways that I can create that. So meal delivery was a way to really help me with my food. Having someone come help me really organize and clean my space, or just simply moving into an Airbnb, which surprisingly would be less expensive than my current. It's about half the expense of my current living situation. So then the other things that I'm planning on doing is this week, so the next time I check in with you, I should have prepared a schedule for a daily schedule, rough schedule, because remember, I'm all about being right now and not doing. One of the reasons I want to make a schedule is actually to remind me to be. So this schedule is going to be prioritizing rest, meditation, those kinds of things, and scheduling those in first. I know what my body rhythms are like. I know when I need that rest. And then scheduling the other things around it. So when I start feeling like I'm not being productive enough, which is something that comes up for me, I can just lean into my schedule and be like, nope, it is time for you to rest. So I'm going to prepare a restorative schedule for myself. My restorative schedule is going to include times of deep presence. So not active meditation, which is what I tend to do, which is fantastic, but it's active. So times of presence where I can just be. There are some books that I want to read that have to do with different healing work. So I'm going to set aside time to read and set aside times for things like yoga and taking baths. I've also scheduled an appointment with a naturopathic doctor, and I have a meeting with my health insurance office tomorrow to try and get things sorted there. So for the next 6 months, I'm going to commit myself to a restorative schedule that allows me lots of time to rest, lots of time for presence, so that I can restore my physical health, my emotional health, and my spiritual well-being, and my financial health. It sounds like a lot when I say it out loud, but I also realize that those things have not been a priority for me. My priority has been on my spiritual well-being, my children, and my business. So now I really need to focus on my physical health and my financial health. So I believe that's everything for today. There's nothing else coming through right now. So the next time we talk, I will share in more detail what my restorative schedule looks like. And I'll be sharing with you what comes up for me as I move through the state of slowness, of rest, of being, the shifts that come out of that, the healing that comes out of that. I'm really excited to see where I am 6 months from now. And I invite you to join me So if any of this resonated with you, go ahead and make your restorative schedule. And when we check in next week, you'll hear my schedule, and I look forward down the road to hearing about your schedule and what is transpiring for you, or what has transpired for you at the end of these 6 months. Have you ever really committed yourself to something for 6 months? I think the other times that I have done something like this would be like when I trained to run a marathon. I was really committed to that. And I had, at that time, I had been a runner in the past, but was not a runner at that time. Was very out of shape, maybe in the worst shape of my life. And so really started with just, walking those first couple miles, and committed to it, and I finished it. I didn't run the whole marathon. I completed the marathon. So walking and jogging. But it's amazing what you can accomplish when you just apply yourself consistently to something. I've also experienced that with my business. When I made the commitment to create my business, I was very dedicated to it. And I committed in that case, I committed 1 year to just really focusing on my business. And it was successful. So in this case, I'm committing myself, because even as I'm sharing those two examples, I can feel the productivity it's almost making me feel anxious. But in this case, I'm committing myself to rest for 6 months. And I can't wait to see what the end of that looks like. So I hope you will join me for the journey, and I look forward to checking in with you next week.